Siman Daled, Sa'if Aleph, Beis Shmuel Sif Cotton Aleph. The Mechaber had brought down the din that Nesinim, which are Givoinim, one of the Zayin Umais, are forbidden to intermarry into the congregation, and that is a permanent prohibition. In other words, even if they convert, their children, children's children, and so on, are forbidden to intermarry into the Jewish congregation. The Beis Shmuel is going to quote the Gemara in Yevamos Daf Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, where the Gemara is going to speak about the two Lashonos in Rava. At first, Rava said that the prohibition in the Torah of Loisis Chaten Bam applies specifically to the Zayin Umais when they are still Goyim. But after they convert, if they convert and they become Gerim, then the restriction of Loisis Chaten Bam, that we're not allowed to intermarry with them, falls away. Once they are Gerim, they're treated like any other Gerim. And the reason of Rava is because the concern was that if we allow intermarriage, then the non-Jewish partner, the male, will influence his children to serve idols, because the Zayin Umas are particularly steeped in idol worship. Then Rava retracted that opinion and said, no, Loisis Chaten Bam is an Isser that applies after the Zayin Umas have converted to Judaism. It's a particular Isser that applies to Gerim from the Zayin Umas, that we're not allowed to marry them. And the reasoning is because Rava says there's no chasnus, there's no legal, halachically valid way that there could be a marriage between Goyim, and therefore Loisis Chaten Bam is superfluous if it applies to them when they are non-Jewish, and obviously it must apply to after they have converted. Then once we've established that, the second Lashon of Rava, the second approach of Rava, then we have to understand what's unique about the Nesinim if all the Zayin Umas we're forbidden to intermarry them even after they've converted. So we'll see that inside. Says the Beis Shmuel, Hina beperek ha'aral, in the Gemara in Yevamos, Amar Rava, Rava says that the Isra of Loisis Chaten, the Ksiv b'Zayin Umes, as it applies to the Zayin Umes, to the 7 nations, Ayre b'Geyusan, refers to when they are still Goyim, before they have converted to Judaism, or if they have not converted to Judaism, then they are considered to be, the Isra of Loisis Chaten applies to them, and we're not allowed to intermarry them, as I said before, because they'll potentially influence our children, they will influence our children to negatively to serve Avodah Zarah. It says Rava, according to this first expression, after they have converted, Shari, they are permitted into the congregation of Israel. El Nesinim, the only exception to that rule is Nesinim, because of their particular brand of cruelty, because they were they had the characteristic of extreme vindictiveness. So Gazer David Aleim, David HaMelech decreed concerning them that they are never allowed. So even after they convert, Loisis Chaten, you're not allowed to intermarry into them. He extended the Issa Deraisa. That was the first expression of Rava. Hadar Amar Rava, afterwards Rava retracted and revised his explanation, and he says Loisis Chaten, the Isra of Loisis Chaten, Ayre b'Gerusan, must be referring to after the 7 nations have already converted to Yiddishkeit, after they're Yidden. Because once they're Yidden, then yes, there's a special Isra that you're not allowed to intermarry, you're not allowed to marry such a ger, but at least the principle, the halachic legal reality of chasnos applies to them because they are Jewish. Just as an added restriction, that an adjunct restriction that doesn't allow us to marry them. Aval b'geyusan, but once they are still non-Jewish, leisbu chasnos, they do not have a din of chasnos, and therefore you don't. It's redundant to say loisis chaten bam. So we have 2 lashonos. In summary, we have 2 expressions of Rava. According to the first expression, the prohibition of loisis chaten applies when the Zayin Umas are still Goyim. The second lashon says that Leisis Chatan applies when they have converted to Judaism. Upasak Rambam Perek Yud Beis Mihilchus Surabia, and the Rambam paskins Kelishna Kama. He paskins like the first lashon of Rava. In other words, that the prohibition applies only when the Zayin Umas are goyim, and once they convert to Judaism, you're allowed to marry them like you would be allowed to marry any other ger. V'chol Zayin Umas mutarim lischaten bohem, and Achashin Isgairu, all the 7 nations, says the Rambam, you're allowed to marry them after they convert. El Nesinim, the exception is Nesinim because of their particular cruelty. Shem Zayin Umas, even though they're from the Zayin Umas, once they convert, you should be allowed to marry them. But Gaza David Aleim, Shalo Yikansu Bekal Le'olam, David Hamelech was gozer that they should never be allowed to enter into the congregation of Israel. Veleka Issa Deraisa, so you see there's no Issa Deraisa of Leisis Chaten Bam. It is an Issa Derabanan or Medivrei Kabbalah. It's from David HaMelech. V'cheinu das Rashi, Kamosh Kosav Reish Perek Elanaris. Rashi also paskins is of the opinion that the halach is like the first lashon of Rava, and Leisis Chaten applies to when they are still goyim. But there's no restriction after they convert, except if they're nesinim. V'cheinu das hamor, the Mar also holds like Rashi and the Rambam, K'moshe kosav b'perek ha'aral. So all of those opinions hold that the lishna kama, that the first expression is the of Rava is the halacha. Avaladas and Ramban ve'arashba, but the Ramban and the Rashba, they maintain that Hilchasa Kelishna Basra de Rava. They say that the halacha follows the second expression of Rava, and Leisis Chaten applies after they've converted. This is a special and unique Isser that applies to converts from the Zayin Umes. Vasurin kol Zayin Umes unesinim midiraisa. And all the 7 nations and the nesinim are asur midiraisa after they convert to Judaism. They themselves, the converts themselves, cannot intermarry with a Jew. El habanim shenoldu achashin isgairu, but the children that are born to these nesinim after they nisgair. So in other words, let's say you have the first generation. They were born Zayin Umes and they convert. So according to the Ramban and the Rashba, the Isser of Leisis Chaten will apply to them and you can't marry them. But their children are permitted to marry into the congregation of Israel. Ubanim minasinim asurim machmas gzeres David. But the children of Nesinim are the exception because of the Gzeir of David, that even their children and children's children, ad soif kol adoros, can never intermarry into the congregation. So both the Ramban and the Rashba follow the second lashon of Rava. But Rabbeinu Tam svirei gam ken kishitazu. Rabbeinu Tam also maintains that the second lashon of Rava is the right lashon, and that once people, even after the Zayin Umas have converted, it's forbidden to marry such a convert. And so Rabbeinu Tam also maintains the Asuni midiraisa, that it is forbidden midiraisa to marry such a convert. El Svirale, but the Rabbeinu Tam has a slight modification on this. He maintains that Gzeirus David hayala shibud, that Gzeirus David wasn't on the fact that they can't marry into the congregation of Israel, but what David wanted to do is he wanted to isolate them somewhat from the congregation. He accepted because of the Chilul Hashem that would have been involved if he wouldn't have accepted their conversion. He accepted their conversion. In other words, he accepted the fact that they had a status of Yidden, of Jews, but he delegated them to be slaves. He enslaved them. And that way he would have isolated them from the community and people wouldn't intermarry with them, and they would be restricted from entering into the congregation because of their cruelty in that fashion. V'chol eilu de kachoshiv, and all of these categories that the Mechaber is going to list, Nesinim, Mitzrim, Edomim, and so on, all of these categories, Hainafilu Nizgairu Asurim, even after they convert, they are forbidden to marry into the congregation of Israel because of the Isra of Leisis Chatem Bam. Ele Besifhei, However, in Sif Hey, where the Mechaber would say that a Jewish man who is intimate with one of these categories of Zayin Umas, then the Vlad follows the mother, and the Mechaber says if any one of these, except for a mamzer, is intimate with a Bas Yisrael, with a Jewish woman, then the offspring of such a marriage is kosher. They're allowed to marry into the Jewish congregation. So when it says that Mashikosav Yisrael haba lachas me'elu v'achas me'elu v'chulu ayru b'geyusan, that must be, the Mechaber must be talking about while they're still goyim. So one of these categories of nation, while they're still goyim, if they are intimate with a Jewish woman or a Jewish man, then the halach is as it's written over there. Az havlad kemoisa, that the vlad is like the woman. So if she's the one who's not Jewish, then the offspring are not Jewish. If she's Jewish, then the offspring are Jewish. Gam yesh leimed da'ayri sham nami b'gerusan. Or you could even explain that the Mechaber is talking about there, even after they convert, the same din would apply. Yisrael baal achas b'gerusan, if a Jewish man is intimate with one of these categories of women after she converted, so she's now a Gioiris, az holchim acher hapogum, then we go according to the fact that she has a pogum. A pogum, as we'll learn later, means that she can't marry a kohen. V'hu pogum, and since her offspring is pogum, her daughter would be forbidden to marry a kohen. So again, in summary, we have the two opinions of Rava as to what loisis chaten applies to, whether it applies to a person who is the Zayin Umas while they're still goyim, or whether it applies after they convert. In either case, the Nesinim would be an exception, and the exception would be that they are never allowed to enter into marriage with a Jewish person. And Rabbeinu Tam says that the Gzeira of David was that they were enslaved as a way of isolating them from the Kahal.